So I'm one of those guys who really likes the way that the Trailhawk edition of the Grand Cherokee looked. I think the hood graphic was really cool, and the tow hooks and all that. I just think those particular models just really look good. So even though this is a limited, I've kind of done a couple of things that have sort of made it look like a Trailhawk a little bit. I raised the front end up a couple inches, put some aggressive tires on it. I've got the red tow hooks down here now. I'm going to work on the hood graphic. So I looked at the Mopar, the actual Mopar hood graphic that the Trailhawk models come with, and it's like hundreds of dollars. It's just ridiculous how much they charge you for a piece of plastic. So I'm not going to do that. So I started looking around online to see, are there any other hood graphics that I think look pretty cool, even if they don't match the one that comes on the Trailhawk model. Surely there's some stuff out there that looks pretty good. And I found something that I liked, and the price was right. So I went ahead and ordered it up. This is the last opportunity I've got to put it on. It's about 45 degrees out here. Ideally, you want it to be warmer than this, but it's January. It's not going to get warmer than this. In fact, it's going to get a whole lot worse than this. So I'm going to go ahead and try to get this done today. So step one is you got to clean your hood down. And so what I've done is I've mixed up a solution of Dawn dish soap and water. And the reason I'm doing that is because you want to get all of the wax and oil and anything that's on your paint. You got to get all that stuff off of here so that your graphic will stick properly. So you don't really want to use normal car wash soap because a lot of those have waxes built into them and all that kind of stuff, right? So just going to wash this down real good and get it cleaned up so we have a properly prepped surface to work with. And then we can move on to step two. So here's the graphic that I decided to go with. I think that once it's on the Jeep, it's going to look pretty cool. So I basically have unrolled it here, and I've got a couple of blocks on it, as you can see, to kind of help it stretch out a little bit. One of the things that I've always done that really has helped me when it comes to putting on large graphics is that I'll take a pair of scissors and go around the outside and trim it as close to the actual graphic as possible. You don't want like excess transfer paper around the edges, especially when it's all shaped differently. The reason being is you want to be able to visually look at this thing, and kind of line it up. And when you've got it trimmed to where it's symmetrical, it's perfectly symmetrical, then visually it'll help your eyes to line the graphic up on the body panel better. So I've just kind of gone around the edges with the scissors and trimmed it so that all of the edges are shaped the same and look the same. That's a really important step, and I think it's something that you pretty much have to do if you're going to, try to line this thing up correctly. Now that it's trimmed, all I have to do is carefully pull the transfer paper backing off of this. And with a large graphic like this, it's going to be kind of difficult. If you've got an extra set of hands, it would help. I don't have, so I'm going to try and do without it. But if you've got an extra person to help you, it would definitely make this easier, because you got to make sure that this thing doesn't curl up over on top of itself and get stuck to itself as you're taking the paper off the back. And then the other step is we're going to spray it down with soapy water. I'm going to use the same solution that I just used to clean the hood. I'm going to soak the back of this thing down real good. I'm going to soak the hood really good. And that way, when I lay the graphic on there, it won't immediately stick to the hood. It'll give me, a few moments to position it correctly and start squeegeeing the water out of it. Okay, so that's what a lot of people call the wet method of putting on graphics. And if you're doing something large like this, you pretty much have to do it that way. All right, so it just so happens that I've got a pair of polarized sunglasses, and that's going to help cut down the glare, because honestly, this white hood is reflecting a lot of sunlight, and it's making it kind of difficult to see exactly what I got going on here. So I put my sunglasses on, that knocks down the glare. So now this is the most difficult part of the installation, and that is we got to peel this backing off and get this thing stuck on here. So I'm gonna go ahead and soak down the hood best I can here. with this soapy water mixture. And you can't overdo this particular step. You can't have too much soapy water. You can have too little soapy water, but you can't have too much. So don't worry about how much you're putting on there. Just soak it down really good. Now when you pull this transfer paper off, especially if it's chilly outside like it is here today, you're going to have to go slow and make sure that your vinyl is staying on your transfer paper there. I guess I'm using the wrong terminology. This is the backer, and that's the transfer paper, I believe, that the vinyl is actually attached to. So I'm going to go really slow here. And I might as well just shoot this video in real time so you can see how long this actually takes. I think this graphic's going to look pretty daggone cool if I don't screw it up. Now I notice right here on this portion of the graphic there is a cutout for the windshield washer fluid nozzle, looks like. So I want to pay attention to that. Smaller graphics are pretty easy to deal with. These larger ones are a pain, especially when it's kind of breezy outside like it is here today. Like I said, honestly, this is not ideal weather conditions to do this, but I want to go ahead and get it done because the weather's about to turn fierce here in Kentucky, and it looks like we're not going to have any decent weather again until at least the end of the month, if not next month. It's looking pretty rough, honestly. Now, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to spray some soapy water on the graphic, and that way, as I'm touching it here to kind of hold down the corners, I can use my fingers and kind of handle it without it sticking to me. You know what I'm saying? All right, we're just about to the end here. This is where it starts to get a little sketchy. All right, that paper is clear. Go ahead and soak this down really good. Soak it down really, really good. Like I said, you can't put too much on here. Trust me when I say you can't put too much on there, because when you turn this over and stick it to your hood, you want to be able to move it around a little bit and get it where you want it. All right, here we go. Here we go, and here comes the wind. No. See what I'm saying? Oh, the wind makes it so hard. Makes it so hard. So, thankfully, I've got this thing down now. Whew, that was close. You guys got to see me almost have a disaster on my hands. So now that everything is soaked down, we're going to position this correctly. Now, I got to find the little slot there for the washer fluid, and it looks like to me that they didn't cut that in the right spot, because it's down here and the washer nozzle's up here. Oops. They may have made a little boo-boo on their end. All right, so now that it's stuck to the Jeep and it's really wet so I can move it around, now is when you can position it exactly where you want it. You can stand back and look at it, get it to where you're happy. Some people like to make measurements and put painter's tape on the hood. Whatever you feel like you need to do to get this thing exactly where you want it, that's what you need to do. And then the final step here is going to be to take your squeegee and start pushing the water out. Go back and forth, push the water out, and as you squeegee it, it will naturally push all the soap and water out, and it'll leave just the sticky backing on the vinyl decal. And then you just give it a half hour or an hour in the sun to dry, squeegee it out a little bit more, and then you can pull this white paper off and you should be good to go. I'm going to go get the squeegee, and the one that I'm using has that felt edge on it, so I'll be right back. All right, here's the squeegee that I'm using. You can see how it's got that felt edge on it so that you don't scratch up your paint as you're pushing the water out of your decal. I think I got it positioned finally. I did some more adjustment to get it where I wanted it. I think I had it too far toward the windshield. I think it's actually supposed to come down toward the grill a little farther. So I've lined everything up perfectly. I ended up getting out a tape measure, and I measured from side to the edge of the hood to make sure it's perfectly even. The line here at the front of the hood looks great. I'm pretty happy with that. So now we can start to squeegee the water out. So what you want to do is just kind of go from inside to out. And this is going to take a while, but you just kind of got to slowly go inside to out. You'll see the water and soap coming out of the edge. Kind of go back and forth, and you're going to just work it and work it and work it until you can see that there are no more air bubbles, no more water bubbles trapped in there. You're just working it, working it, working it. And it's like I said, this part right here is the most time consuming part, but you got to make sure that you take your time and do this and get all the water bubbles out. You do not want to get lazy on this part because you'll ruin the entire project. So start from the middle and go out, top to bottom, or in my case, bottom to top. And I'll come back when I get done with this part and kind of show you what I've got here so far. But you know, this is time consuming, but it does make it worthwhile to do it slowly and take your time, because like I said, it's going to look great when you get it done. So I'll bring the camera in and give you a close-up of what's going on here. Ooh, there we go. That's a little better. All right, so you can see how the water and the soap, let me get over here so the sun will cooperate. You can see how the water and the soap gets squeezed out as you're working along. You can see there's a lot of air bubbles still down here. Just got to work this whole thing over real good, and then we'll let the sun and the wind do its thing for a while before we take the paper off. All right, so at this point I've pretty much squeegeed out what I can, and if you look at it, you can see I still got air bubbles in the paper there. You can see some places here that have some air bubbles. Sometimes you just have to give it some time for the sun to dry some of this up, and then you can actually stick that to the hood or the body panel a little bit better once it dries up. But you just do what you can do. Let the sun work on it for a little while. Obviously this white section of paper is going to get pulled off, so when you're squeegeeing this stuff, don't get caught up focusing on this as if it's one giant piece. You have to look at it in terms of each section of the actual vinyl graphic. And one of the reasons I went with this particular graphic is because of the way it's designed with these smaller strips of vinyl. I figured it would be easier to squeegee the water out of each of those little strips than it would have been if it was a solid piece of vinyl. You can imagine if this was one big piece of vinyl, it would be really hard to get all of the air bubbles out. But hopefully with it being strips like this, most of the air bubbles got squeegeed out, and once it dries, it'll look pretty good. It might have a couple in it, because like I said, the weather conditions are not perfect for this today. Even tore the paper a little bit right there. But overall, you know, just take your time and you can get it to look pretty good. Now, when I come back after this thing has dried thoroughly and I pull this paper, my experience tells me that it's still going to be a little bit wet in there. So you can already see how that's kind of coming up there. So that's a good spot to start. When you start pulling that paper off, go slow, because if there's still a little bit of moisture in there, the vinyl may not have stuck to the body panel very well just yet. So go slow, pull that off, And then once you get the paper off, you can still work with the vinyl a little bit. If you've got a couple of air bubbles here and there, you can kind of gently squeegee those out with the soft edge of the squeegee blade. So there's a big one there. But yeah, let's just give it some time to dry, and we'll see what's up. Now, admittedly, I got this from Amazon. You can see right here, see that cutout? And then there's one over there. I feel like they probably put those there to accommodate the windshield washer nozzles, but I'm thinking maybe some of the older Grand Cherokees had these nozzles farther down, because when I moved this graphic up, those didn't really line up with my nozzles the way that I thought they would, and it put this whole section of the graphic up there on the windshield. So obviously that's not, that's not where it's supposed to be. So maybe the older Grand Cherokees had these washer fluid nozzles farther down here on the hood, and so they cut that out to accommodate the older models. Maybe that's what the deal is with that. I don't know. All right, time to see what it looks like. So I very carefully pulled the white paper off, and it was still just a little bit wet in there as expected, but I think it looks pretty good. It came out all right. Let me get over here. Totally changes the look of the Jeep. Now, I'm going to leave it out here in the sun and let it continue to dry, because like I said, even when you take that white paper off, there's still going to be a little bit of moisture left down underneath that vinyl. So I need to let it dry a little better. But yeah, overall, I'm pretty happy with it. The prep work makes all the difference in the world. You got to make sure you get the hood clean. If you have any dirt on your hood at all, once you put this vinyl over top of it, it'll stick out like a sore thumb. So you want to make sure you get that cleaned up real good. I like to put the squeegee away and just kind of go over it with my fingers. Sometimes that can help you find bubbles pretty easy. But I don't think I have any bubbles in here. Feels pretty good overall. Now, I'm not going to lie, when you go to take that white backing paper off, it's transfer paper, whichever one that is. I keep getting the terminology mixed up, but some of you pro graphics guys can correct me. Anyway, once you start peeling that last piece of paper off, you got to go real slow, because I noticed that some of these smaller strips were pretty difficult. They wanted to stick to the paper and come off of the hood, so that made it pretty tough. So just take your time on that. But overall, not too shabby. Another little project done. Anything you can do to kind of separate the Jeep and make it not look like the other 1 million white Grand Cherokees out there, right? That's all I got for now, guys. Thanks for watching. As always, we'll talk to you later.